My name is Ruth Setzer, and for the past 13 years, I have worked here in Louisville for Humana, Inc. in the product design and development area, and I'm a director of product compliance. Before moving to Louisville, I lived actually in a few different states, but I have lived in Louisville for the past 21 years, and so I really call it home today. And I live in the Middletown area with my husband, John, when we have 3 children together, 1 grandchild and our 2 fur babies. So thank you very much for having me today.
Well, Ruth, we have your slides pulled up, so just say next slide, or on the next slide you'll see, and I'll control the slides from my end, but the floor is all yours. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much. I've already heard some great things today. I unfortunately had to join a little bit late, so I'm sorry that I missed some of the earlier presentations, but I know that some of the things I heard do feed into the message that I want to give you about developing your personal brand. So you can go to the next slide, please. As we talk through personal branding, I want to start with what is it, first of all, uncovering your personal brand and how your personal brand really comes into play in 2 separate instances, one at work and one more of your online or social media presence. Next. I don't think any of you would be shocked if I told you that you already have a personal brand. You've probably heard the saying that your reputation precedes you. Well, the same could be said for your personal brand. In fact, your personal brand is what people think of when they hear your name. And if you're looking at the slides, there's a quote from Jeff Bezos, which I like. It says, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. In addition to your reputation, your brand encompasses all the attributes that define you. So your competencies, your special abilities, interests, vision, values. And it's how you promote your unique combination of skills, experience, and personality in a way that you want others to see. So it's the telling of your own story, and it's reflective of your conduct, your behavior, even your unspoken words and attitudes. But it's more than just a summary of where you are today. It's also a roadmap for you to use for where you want to go. One thing about professional branding is it is key to attracting new opportunities. And it also can help you connect with advocates, mentors, sponsors, people who will tell your story to others. More than likely, there are people out there who are ready and willing to take that on and to be your partner and champion your cause. But it may be that you need to intentionally make it known that you are in the market for that type of support. In fact, if one thing comes through today in this presentation, I would like it to be that personal branding needs to be intentional. Most successful endeavors don't have chance. And just like successful initiatives, successful personal branding takes thoughtful purpose and effort. So how do you go about cultivating your personal brand? Next slide. If you already have a personal brand, what does it say about you? Some of you probably are very secure in that response, and you know exactly what your personal brand is. However, some may be wondering, how do I really determine that? So there's a couple of different techniques you can use. One is to start asking yourself questions, such as, what are my unique skills? What is unique about me that I have to offer, either in my business or in my education or in my hobbies? What are my skills? What are my values? What do I value the most? And how do I bring that through when I'm showcasing my personal brand? And then, of course, your goals. What are your career goals? What are your aspirations? What do you want to do with that brand? Another way is to ask others. Ask people, what strengths do you see in me, or do you think you see others seeking out of me? Typically, like I said before, you're going to be known. And there is going to be input that you can receive that's valuable in helping you figure these things out. What are you known for today? What words would you use to describe me when I'm at my very best? If you had to name one thing I stand for, or one issue that attracts my attention, what would it be? Or to be more effective, what suggestions do you have for me? There are plenty of other questions you can think of to ask others and to ask yourself, but these questions put a framework in place for you. And asking others can really help you get an additional perspective because it can help you assess your strengths and weaknesses, one thing, and it may help you determine what steps you need to take, where you need to put your focus to actually get where you want to be if you don't feel you're there just yet. Maybe you want to further your education, or you want to move a different direction within your company. It can be anything, but it can also confirm that you're already on the right path and you're going in the right direction, and you just keep it up. Next slide. Once you have established what your personal brand is or what you want it to be, you do need to take time to showcase it. And this means establishing yourself in two primary forums, and I'm going to separate these just for the sake of simplicity for work and online. So there is a fine line between the two in many cases, but there are also some unique considerations for each. So let's start out by discussing how you would promote your personal brand at work. Next slide. At work probably looks different to you based on your current situation. Prior to the pandemic, I would have said the majority of us probably have a physical workplace. And while that is probably still true and is getting back towards where it was before, I think more than ever there are people who are working remotely, using the internet, but there are still plenty who are in the office as well. But regardless of location, for the sake of this context, let's use at work to mean your job. So most likely, your job is going to require interaction with various groups of people. Your coworkers, they may be clients, boards, agencies, sometimes in person and sometimes via remote access technology, applications like Zoom or WebEx. So part of personal branding at work is strategic self-promotion. And let me caveat that by saying this isn't the same as bragging. I think I heard someone mention bragging before and how that has a negative connotation. It definitely does, and I think that for women, we don't want to come off as being braggadocious. We don't want to seem self-promoting in a negative way. But there is a way to strategically self-promote as part of developing your personal brand. One way to do that is to create an elevator pitch. This is just a brief statement that summarizes your work and your skills, 1 to 2 sentences that explains the value you have to offer, who benefits and how. For example, my personal elevator pitch would be something like, highly motivated professional with 13 years of experience in the healthcare insurance industry, providing expertise navigating complex federal regulations to inform a Fortune Top 50 company's product design and development. So it can be as simple as that. And that is what you have. That's where kind of the framework for your promotion, for your strategic self-promotion. Another way is obviously to build a network. Building a network is very important, and that is where not just at work or in the office, but outside of your professional organization, volunteering, being on boards, that kind of thing. Because talent can sometimes be neglected or even taken for granted or overlooked if you limit it just to within your own company. Exposure brings additional opportunities, and there are tons of them out there. There could be trade shows, conferences, clubs. So take the time to explore those opportunities. The more connections you make, the more value you bring. And that's especially true if you're looking to make a change in your current job. According to one statistic that I read, 85% of all jobs are filled through networking. I don't I don't think that's a surprise, because obviously if you know someone, you're going to feel more comfortable with recommending them if you've seen their work and you know that they do good work. So definitely networking is important. Sharing your knowledge and expertise, offering to present within your company, or also, again, outside, professional organizations, conferences, sharing what you know with others. That helps get your brand out there. It gives you a chance to showcase your knowledge, what you are passionate about. And then, of course, you can always be a mentor as well. I think there was one of the talks earlier was on mentorship. A great way at developing your brand. And lastly, recognizing others. Let other people know that you appreciate them or found value in what they've shared with you. It never hurts at all to be appreciative, and that is also part of your brand. It enhances your brand. It is not your brand in and of itself, but it does enhance your brand. Next slide. Social media. Okay, I have to caveat this by saying I am definitely not a social media guru personally. However, over time, I have used social media, and I have learned more and more about social media and the impact that it has on a personal brand. So lots of times when you even hear personal branding, you think solely of social media. That's why I really wanted to include the part about your brand at work, because your personal brand is all of you. It can be, social media can definitely be a huge part of that, but it's not limited to that. But thinking about social media, it can be a very powerful tool. According to the Pew Research Center, as of February 2021, 72% of U.S. adults say they use at least one social media site. And of those, YouTube and Facebook are the most widely used platforms, according to that research. And the user base of those platforms are most broadly representative of the population as a whole. So, of course, there are many other sites: Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Those are just some of the more popular ones. There are probably those of you out there who can name many more than I can. But I would venture to say that most everyone has some sort of social media presence. So from a practical perspective, you may think, I'm just on social media just for the fun of it, and that's fine too. But then there could be other people who are really using social media to promote their business or their brand. Some people even make a whole career out of social media influencers, those social media celebrities that really just build their personal brand based on their knowledge or their expertise, and then they make regular posts about a topic and generate lots of followers. So I think you may be familiar, and you may get following someone out there who's really interesting to you, or they are very knowledgeable about a topic that you have an interest in. So if you've been in that situation, you do follow someone on TikTok, Instagram, or you subscribe to their channels, whatever, then you know that whenever they are talking about things, it kind of is something that you're going to pay attention to. For example, I have watched videos where someone has recommended a product. And if that is someone that I have followed for a while and I trust their input, then it may make me much more inclined to try that product. And some influencers can even reportedly make upwards of $250,000 per post from the brands. Brands really love influencers because they obviously, like it implies, they influence people to try brands. So again, those are two separate spectrums, right? So, if you're just on social media, you say you have a Facebook profile, you just want to share pictures with your friends and family, that's fine. Um, I would say, though, if that's the case, consider how you adjust your privacy settings. You may want to change those so that someone doesn't just stumble upon you. If you have a profile, though, that you're using to promote your brand, make sure that it's kept updated. And I'll go back to being intentional, because that's a really big part of having social media presence, is being intentional about how you represent yourself and being consistent across platforms, so that people are getting the same view of your presence wherever they go. For a little more insight on social media, next slide, please. So regardless of what the platform is or what the settings are, there are employers, in fact 70%, who use social media to screen candidates. And there are 70% of U.S. recruiters and HR professionals who have actually rejected job candidates based on information they found online. So if you're online and your information is public, make sure that it is what you want it to be. In fact, even your current employers, 43% of employers who use social media to check on their current employees. And then another view, people who use social media effectively can actually be very successful. For example, 78% of sales reps who use social media techniques and outsell their peers. So social media, very powerful and very effective when it's done right. So in summary, just be conscious about what and where you're posting. If your profile is just simply for your own personal pleasure, then adjust your privacy settings. Make sure that it's only viewable to your friends and family. And there's nothing wrong with that. Personal life is personal. There's nothing wrong with keeping it that way. But if you're using it for business, which is also great, just make sure you're being consistent across all your platforms. So with those two things in mind, I think moving forward, as you're thinking about your personal brand and you're working toward how you want that to look, just remember that it really encompasses more than just social media, but it's your overall presence at work and online, how you present yourself to others, and you can go about it in a way that is intentional and really puts forth the kind of image that you want to be perceived as. Thank you. That's all I had.
Well, Ruth, thank you so much for that presentation. And we've gotten some questions that have come in through our chat, and so I'm going to direct a few of those to you. So this first question comes from Allison, and Allison says, any advice to giving someone feedback who is harming their own personal brand?
Great question. I know that I have seen that happen. I've seen where people have posted things inappropriately on social media, and it can be very impactful. It can in a very negative way. I think it depends on who that person is and your relationship with them. Obviously, I mean, it's easier to be candid with a friend, but I think it's also, if you feel comfortable with approaching someone and you have that kind of relationship and just say, you know, I saw this post, I'm not really sure if that's going to be perceived the way you want it to, or there may be people who are viewing that post that take offense to that. I mean, it really just depends on the situation, because in some cases, if it's personal, it may be less something that you can approach, whereas if it's in a professional realm, you could possibly talk to the person and just give them that advice. So I think it really just depends on who the person is and the situation.
That's good advice. So this next question comes from Isabel. And Isabel says, what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out? She says, to follow up, I'm just trying to get people to start calling me Isabel instead of Izzy.
That's great. I love that. That's always a difficult thing. So I think going back to the questions that you're asking yourself, and also approach others, people that you respect, people that know you well, and you feel that you can trust their opinion. Get input from them and say, hey, this is what I want to achieve with my personal brand. What am I doing that you think is working, that you're getting that perception from me, or are you seeing something that's maybe standing in the way of me being perceived that way? As far as the name goes, yeah, that's a difficult one depending on what kind of business you're in. I mean, you can always correct people, but I know that gets hard if you have to keep correcting people. But if you're working closely with a team and you are very close with them, you could always ask, hey, can you, if you're introducing me to someone, or I really would like, to use my full name. I feel more comfortable with that. Can you please refer to me that way so I can help that catch on with other people?
Well, that's wonderful. All right, so we have 2 more questions, and then we'll ask you for some final thoughts. And this question comes from Linda, and Linda says, what if you're not heavy on social media? Is your personal brand really relative if you're not on platforms to express yourself?
Yes, and I think that's a great question. And in fact, I feel that I tend more toward the at work and professional side of the in-person or conference, that kind of thing, than I would be actually on social media platforms. That's not a problem. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve and what industry you're in. Some industries, I would say, are going to be much more prone to having competition through social media. So that means that if your peers are out there and they are touting their whatever their business is, then they are likely to have a competitive edge if they're using social media in a strong way. But if you're in an industry where that is not necessarily the case, then I would say, you don't have to be a heavy social media user. Again, that goes back to this thing about personal branding is not just your social media presence. Like I said, a lot of people think of it that way, and it definitely is a big part of it, especially if you are basing your brand within social media. But if that's not the case, then use the other outlets to your advantage.
Wonderful advice. So this is going to be our last question, and then we'll ask you for final thoughts. And this question comes from Finley, and Finley asks, how do I communicate that I've changed my personal brand?
That's an interesting question. So I guess it depends on what forum you have available to you. So your personal brand, a lot of your personal brand is going to be in your interactions with the people that you deal with regularly. So if you're making differences, it's going to start to become apparent. You can actually talk about it with people. If your interests have changed and you're wanting to move in a different direction, let people know. Let your leaders know, or your colleagues know. I'm really interested in moving in this direction with my career, and maybe even talk about what you're doing to move in that direction. We talked about self-promoting a little bit ago, and that's part of it. You're not bragging, but you're letting people know. This is what I intend to do. I'm moving in this direction, and ask for advice. It never hurts to ask for advice.
Well, thank you. Well, Ruth, thank you for sharing that presentation this afternoon. So as we conclude for the day, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
My final thoughts would just be, when you're thinking about personal branding, just be intentional about it and be thoughtful. It is not something I think that most people are going to obsess on in the way that they want to be a social media influencer. And there's nothing wrong with that if you do. It can be a very strong, powerful way to build your brand. But even if you're not on social media at all, then you're still going to be able to build your brand in your interactions with others. And that can be just as important.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you to all our speakers today, both our panel members and our keynote speakers, and thank you to all our listeners as well. Without all of you, these events would not be possible. So let's continue to support women's leadership and learn from one another. So be safe, be kind to yourselves, and be well. So until next time, this is Ginger Whatley signing off.